Hi, and welcome to the World War II Book Guy. Now, I started the World War II Book Guy a couple of weeks ago, and I gave a brief couple of minute overview of World War II books and my thoughts on it. And then I jumped right into doing some books on World War II, but I thought about it a bit, and I thought I should give a little bit wider introduction to the books on World War II. Now, two reasons for that. First, because the literature of World War II is vast. There are thousands of books on it. And also, World War II, as we teach it today, it's really just become a footnote to history. And I have to say that a lot of the teachers out there today don't know any more about World War II than what's printed in the textbook that they are using. And that teachers too often today, I think, are apt to put a modern day progressive spin on the war without really understanding it. So I wanted to take some time to really get a bit more in depth on the literature of World War II. Now, my background, I've been interested in World War II for over 50 years. I have read and collected hundreds of books. That's just one wall in this room of my books on World War II. I read a great deal about history, other periods in time, other topics, but World War II has always been my passion. That's why I'm doing this. So, when you think about World War II and books on World War II, you got to think about where am I going to begin? There's so many. And I break it down into three kind of broad categories: strategic, operational, and tactical. Strategic books are books that are written by or about the war as a whole. So that comes down into histories that deal with the entire war. Or more commonly, they'll break it down and be either Pacific theater or European theater. Also within that group, I put the memoirs and biographies of individuals who were involved in the war at a strategic level. So think about, I've actually done Churchill's 6 volume set, Eisenhower's Crusade in Europe, a biography of Admiral King, people like that are very much involved at a strategic level, or books that talk about the war at a strategic level. The second group, and there's a whole lot in this group, are what I call operational. Now, those are also can be biographies and memoirs of people who were involved in the war at an operational level. So I say anyone from like a division commander up through an army group commander. And those would include individual battles or campaigns. So you think about people at an operational level, you've got books like Terrible Terry Allen, the commander of the 1st Infantry Division, or Eric von Manstein's Lost Victories, right? Those are individuals who were involved in an operational, not strategic, not tactical, but that middle operational area. And also books that deal with either a particular campaign or a particular battle. Now, in terms of campaigns, you might look at the war on the Eastern Front, or the war in the Mediterranean, North Africa, Sicily, Italy, the Pacific Theater, China, Burma, India, and then individual battles. Now, on the Western Front, or the western part of the war against the Germans, that basically divide between what the Allies did and the war on the Russian front. The Russian front books are typically written by Germans, and there are a lot of books out there about the war as a whole, like the Wehrmacht experience in Russia. You can look at individual books like Guy Sazer's The Forgotten Soldier. You could look individual battles, the Battle of Stalingrad, the Battle of Kursk, etc. On the American or the Allied side, British and Allied, American, Allied, British side, it's more campaign related. As I said, you look at the campaign in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, or Northwest Europe. And just the flow of those has less about individual battles. But the Battle of the Bulge, Hertigan Forest, Cassino, Kasserine Pass, all those have individual books of the battles themselves. On the Pacific Theater, there are a lot of great books out there. Eagle Against the Sun is a really good one if you want to look at the whole theater itself. And there are tons of books about individual battles out there. And it's because the way the war was fought in the Pacific, it was a series of individual battles. The flow wasn't quite the same, like we landed in Normandy and we went across until we hit the German border. So you'll have books on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, Peleliu, you name it. individual ones on campaigns, the Mariana Turkish or whatever that is, New Guinea, Philippines. So there are all these lots and lots of individual books out there, and you got to decide, what is it I'm really interested in? Do I want an overview? Do I want to understand the war as a whole? And you can go from really big, thick books, The Rise and Decline of the Third Reich, things like that. Or you can go to, what I would call coffee table books. There's a lot of those that are good out there if you're looking for just a basic understanding of it. And are you more interested in, like I said, the grander strategy? Are you interested in one theater, a particular battle? Are you more interested in the personalities, in which case you'd want to read a biography or perhaps a memoir? And then there's the whole category of what I call niche books. And there's lots of stuff in there. They don't really fit one of those other categories, but they can be great books. In a couple of just an examples, I'll give you a few examples of books now. There's one called Descent into Darkness. This is just an absolutely fascinating page turner about a Navy diver recovering the sunken vessels at Pearl Harbor. Another niche one, here's one on the Coast Watchers. I've got a couple on that. If you don't know who they were, they're Australians and New Zealanders who owned properties in the Pacific and stayed behind after the Japanese took over to give information to the Allied navies. Just really fascinating stuff. As far as big historical books go, there's some really great big series out there. Elliot Morrison wrote a 15-volume set. This is one volume that covers the entire U.S. Navy operations in World War II. Likewise, the Army, after the war, put out what's called the Green Book series. This is one. There are 78 of them. And I've only got a few of them. This particular one is the European Theater of Operations. It gets into not only each theater of operations, but it gets down into individual books this big on things like the engineers, the medical corps, things like that. So that's really for a deep dive kind of thing if you're interested in that. And then there's really I like older books. I'm fascinated by them. This is a history of World War II. It's actually considered an Armed Services Memorial Edition. Came out in 1945. And it actually has where you can enter your service record and picture in it. So really, there's all kinds of really fascinating stuff out there. Now, you also have to break World War II books down into time period that they were written. You've got your wartime books, and those are books that were written during the war. Guadalcanal Diary, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. I read both of those when I was very young. There's also a 6-volume set called Battle Report that deals with the U.S. Navy. It was written during the war up until 1944. One of the neat things about books that are written in World War II is they'll say in the front of them, this book has been manufactured in accordance with paper conservations of the War Production Board. Now, books that are written during the war are a form of propaganda. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in all of them, books like these, you'll find the Americans are always red-blooded, brave American boys fighting those darn Japs and Germans. But they do make an interesting perspective. You just have to understand why they were written and when they were written. The next in the largest group of books are what I call the post-war World War II book boom, written up from 1945 up to about 1965. And that's where you're going to find the bulk of the memoirs, because people who were involved in the war took the time to write their memoirs. And with so many veterans, there was still a lot of interest in the war. So that's when the bulk of those books came out. And then everything after I would call 1974, I consider modern. And I picked 1974, not completely randomly, but because that's the year that The Ultra Secret came out. It was a book that was written about how we broke the German Enigma code and were able to read all the German communications. Now, the book itself isn't all that great. The guy gets a lot of his facts wrong. He overemphasizes his own importance. But it's really interesting because if you think about books written before this, if you're an Allied commander and you're writing your memoir, you can chalk up your victories to your own military knowledge and your ability to read the enemy's intentions. And if you're in the Germans, on the other hand, were just convinced that no one ever broke the Enigma code, that it was really treachery or a spy that was giving away the information. So those are more of the modern books. Now, I buy most of my books used books, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But when a really interesting book comes out, I'll buy it new and pay full price. I did that, for example, with Ian Ian Toll just came out with a 3-volume set on the War in the Pacific. Now, he wrote, the first volume came out 2011, the third volume in 2020. They're big books, but they are fantastic. They are very readable, very illustrative, very comprehensive. If you're interested in World War II and the Pacific War, this is 3 volumes. Every page is a page turner. On the other hand, here's a book I just picked up recently. I saw this. I thought, wow, that'd be a fascinating book. The Wounded Generation, coming after World War II. This is absolute crap. If you were to read this book, you would believe that all the American soldiers who came back, the white ones anyway, were alcoholic, psychotic, abusive, racists. And that the only reason we consider them the greatest generation is that they had great wartime press and they're only successful because the government created some kind of welfare state for them. It is insulting to the greatest generation. Every now and then, every couple of years, I'll get rid of books, take them over to half-price books. This one's going right into the garbage. So, where do you buy books? Now, when I first started buying books or reading books, I'd go to the library. And then bookstores. Well, there just aren't that many bookstores left, and the ones that are don't really have a lot on World War II. So that really takes you a lot to electronic buying. Now, you can buy books on Amazon, generally paying full price, and they're usually newer editions. You can buy them. I bought some on eBay when I'm looking for something very specific, or online book buyers. My favorite is a place called Thrift Books. I put in what I'm looking for by a title or a topic. They either have it or don't have it. If they don't have it, you can put it on a wait list and they'll let you know. You can choose the price and condition and all that kind of stuff. So, huge amount of stuff on World War II. Fascinating time period. It changed the world. It created the world we live in today. I just thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking in some general senses about how to read, what to look for. If you have any great thoughts on that, let me know. Anyway, I'm Michael, the World War II book guy. Thank you.